Socrates belonged to a very average family, not having much wealth, and that was a time when Greece and particularly Athens was full of people who had lot of wealth. And he said that the goodness can only be brought about if you learn knowledge which is good. So, good knowledge will lead to good virtues, and if you critically examine yourself, you will be able to find answers to many of the questions which are not answered. So, this is the way he thought that the betterment of human beings will take place. So, I think this introspection, asking question, going for morals, going for virtues, going for values, which is why Socrates is regarded as a great moral philosopher also.
Hello dear aspirants, welcome to this conversational series on the moral thinkers. If I ask you a question that there was a political philosopher who has not written any text but still considered as the wisest man of his time and space, can you guess the person? Yes, you might have guessed it correctly. It's Socrates. Socrates also said that an unexamined life is not worth living. So to discuss about the ideas of Socrates, I am joined by Krishna Mohan sir, who is the retired IAS officer. Welcome sir.
Thank you, Vishal.
So sir, let's take our discussion forward regarding Socrates. So we have heard a lot about Socrates from the person who were either contemporary or the disciple. So what was the strangest aspect of Socrates?
So, very rightly said, Vishal, that Socrates did not write anything. All his teachings are available in the form of books written by his contemporaries or by his disciples. And Plato was one of the greatest disciples he had, and we find mention about the principles and teachings of Socrates in the books written by Plato. And he was a firm believer that man is basically an ignorant person. So, human beings are ignorant, and there is a necessity for them to improve upon their knowledge. And this knowledge can only be improved by asking probing questions. So, you have to critically examine yourself, kind of an introspection, and that is the only way to better oneself.
So sir, as we say, any person is child of their own time, and it is also correctly said in the context of the thinkers which lived in that particular space and time. So what was the background of Socrates?
So, Vishal, Socrates belonged to a very average family, not having much wealth, and that was a time when Greece and particularly Athens was full of people who had lot of wealth.
Right.
It was a golden time of that period, was regarded as a golden time, and his father and mother both were very ordinary citizens, but he joined army, and ultimately he became interested in learning. He was very fond of learning, and this is how he started talking about principles of virtue, principles of morality, principles of knowledge. And he said that the goodness can only be brought about if you learn knowledge which is good. So, good knowledge will lead to good virtues. So, that was the basic principle which he had, and he believed that we must critically examine ourselves, and not only asking questions ourselves, but encouraging others to ask questions also. That is the only way to improve oneself.
Right. So as you have rightly pointed out regarding Socrates, that he was more towards the introspection or the self-introspection and continuous learning. So what were the other ideas that Socrates, and what were the methodologies that he was like trying to implement in general to, in a sense, gauge the knowledge?
So, Vishal, the method which he adopted was basically that he felt that knowledge is supreme, knowledge must be acquired, and human beings are very ignorant people, and we start overestimating ourselves. Rather, we should try to imbibe knowledge as much as possible and improve upon the knowledge. So, he said that you have to start with a zero. You have to start feeling as if you do not possess any knowledge, and that can only be done by critically examining oneself. And if you critically examine yourself, you will be able to find answers to many of the questions which are not answered. So, this is the way he thought that the betterment of human beings will take place, and he did not write anything. He had his greatest disciple was Plato, and Plato's disciple was Aristotle. So in a way it was a kind of a chain. And the interesting thing about Socrates was that he did not compromise with anything. He said, if you are having a right ideas, you must have a commitment to those ideas and never compromise those ideas. And that is why he never compromised, even though the people in those areas, those times were very authoritarian, and they did not like the ideas which were propagated by Socrates. They felt that he was corrupting the young minds, and that is why they decided to poison him. So there is a beautiful book also which has been written, The Trial and Death of Socrates. So Socrates lived his complete life. He was not at all afraid of dying, and therefore he accepted death just like he would have got any other emotions inside him.
Right, sir. So as you have talked about that the knowledge and dialectics that Socrates was all for, and he talked entire life all about these particular principles. So now, sir, this unfortunate incident that with Socrates it had happened, that Socrates was poisoned, and ultimately this led to his death also, and he did not bow down to the kind of principle or against those particular principles which he, like in general, wanted to upstand for. So sir, why this particular situation occurred? Can you briefly tell regarding this?
So Vishal, Socrates, as I said, was in favor of questioning. Many people in the power, they did not like his ideas that one should question one's authority or the authority of the other people. And they, because Socrates was of the belief that no one is in the kind of the best person, and everyone has got its strengths and weaknesses, and therefore he felt that the weaknesses can be improved upon by questioning oneself, and if you question oneself, one can always improve oneself. So this was not liked by the people in authority, and they were highly influential people, and they did not want that such a person should exist in their country, and therefore his teachings were not at all appreciated by those people. But what he was telling was absolute truth. In fact, that is why he is called as the founding father of Western philosophy. Just like we have darshan in our country, the Western philosophy had its principle laid down in the teachings of Socrates, and therefore ultimately he was condemned to death by taking poison forcibly.
So that means like he was the pioneer personality as far as the Western either political thoughts or the philosophy is concerned.
Yes.
So sir, my last question to you, as we are seeing regarding his particular ideas, so are they still relevant? What kind of ideas he propagated for? Is there any still relevance of these ideas?
So Vishal, just like I always say that the ideas of great people remain etched in the memory of everyone throughout history. So the ideas of Mahatma Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar, they will always remain relevant in modern times. In the same way, as far as the philosophy is concerned, the ideas of Socrates, Plato and Aristotle will remain always. And in present day's world, when there is so much of intelligence creating lot of poisoning of minds, and one is not able to decipher what is right and what is wrong, it is necessary to question oneself on the ideas, on the lines propagated by Socrates. One should question that, and one should try to find out what is right and what is wrong, which is basically what ethics is about, the difference between good and the bad and the right and the wrong. So I think this introspection, asking question, going for morals, going for virtues, going for values, which is why Socrates is regarded as a great moral philosopher also. He taught us what was virtue, what was right and what was wrong. And he said that if you acquire good knowledge, then you will lead to virtues. So that is why it is so relevant today, and that is why it finds a place in the ethics paper also. So I think it will remain always relevant to the country, not only this country but also the entire world.
Right, sir. So as you have rightly pointed out that the kind of democracies that we are seeing right now in these days, so democracy's basic principle is dialectics, a kind of like dialogue between the people and the one who are ruling authority, and to prevent any kind of authoritarian tendencies, the dialectics are needed, and for that the kind of like philosophy that Socrates propounded will remain relevant.
Yes, Vishal, it was actually, as you very rightly said, there are different approaches, and there is one is called an authoritarian or autocratic approach. The other is a democratic approach. The democratic approach always yields better results because there is an exchange of ideas. Everyone is not the repository of wisdom. There is wisdom in other people also, and that is why questioning oneself and engaging dialogue with others always brings out the best, and that is in fact called as team effort, and team always yields much better results. So that is why I think basically the Socrates ideas are such ideas which talk about people engaging in dialogue and thereby contributing towards something which is the best result which can be expected out of it. So I think this will become extremely relevant even in future.
So thank you very much, sir, for joining and giving the aspirants insight about the life of Socrates, the kind of ideals he stood for, and the kind of relevance that Socrates is having in the present time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Vishal.
So with this, we came to the conclusion of this particular session. For more such sessions, stay tuned with Vision IAS. Thank you.